Okay, let's start creating some substrate materials. First, let's just talk a little bit about what makes substrate special and why it's kind of an important thing that we now have access to compared to our legacy shaders and legacy material creation that we were using up to this point. Well, substrate really shines when a material cannot be described by a single PBR shading model. So if you're looking to explore more substrate materials, look for materials that have some layering, multiple specular responses, mixed dielectric and conductive behavior. Those are going to be materials that are really going to shine under substrate's system. So, a few examples if you are kind of wanting to explore substrate. Classic example is going to be doing car paint. We have multiple specular lobes happening in this. We have, angular color shifts and depths. We have physically separate, clear coat versus the base paint. We have, glints in here as well. So we have kind of a very classic. This is, similar to one of the first things that they showed when they were showing off substrate, and it's a very kind of interesting way to approach substrate if you haven't used it before, because you're able to see your results kind of fairly quickly. Another good example of what substrate could be used for is working with painted metal that has some wear, such as any kind of like industrial props. Up to now in the legacy PBR, we were kind of faking this with color changes. Substrate kind of makes this real, and we're also not going to get the kind of white halo effect that we were getting when we were transitioning from a metal to a non-metal material that we were getting in legacy applications and legacy workflows. So we have the use of horizontal blendings or coverage blendings that we can use to kind of separate these two kind of materials accurately. Another one that could be good to use, this is going to be kind of a subtle effect, but substrate has the ability to work with fuzz BSDFs. So cloth isn't just a rough diffuse. We have retroreflections, we have fuzz matter all over the place. So grazing angles are going to look brighter, and we are going to have control over that with substrate. We have an independent diffuse versus fuzz kind of response on this. So substrate can kind of handle the material like this with a lot of control. Another could be leather. Leather has a diffuse base, has a soft specular, and that's also has kind of a slight surface coating to it. So we have that diffuse specular layering. We have micro roughness breakup. Optional, we can have like a thin, clear coat over top of this as well. So any kind of like coated organic material is also going to be a good approach when you are exploring new materials to try and create. Another great one is going to be just wet surfaces. Any kind of rain affected material. Here I've got some asphalt on the ground that has some oil spilled on it. But this is the same material, but we have different physical states, which is going to be an interesting thing to be able to achieve. We, as I say, also can have like wetness masks. We can have puddle masks. We, as far as like substrate features go, like we have dynamic BSDF blending. We have clear coat layers. We have roughness collapse in wet areas, things like that. And we can even achieve kind of effects like this using the F0, F90 controls without having to kind of load in a kind of a texture, a colored specular texture. We're able to kind of do this all within the material itself. Another one could be just anisotropic metals, so brushed aluminum, machined steel, things like that. The legacy PBR anisotropy was limited, is kind of hacky, but Substrate actually offers true anisotropic specular BSDFs and directional roughness to it, which is really, really nice. So it's kind of perfect if you're doing a hard surface hero prop to be able to kind of use a substrate material on that. Another one could be, frosted, dirty glass is going to be another good example of where a substrate is really going to shine. We have translucent, and then we have opaque interactions. We can also, add in some dirt changes to affect how the light behavior is going to be affecting that. So not just working with opacity. So we have, as far as substrate goes, we have translucent BSDFs. We have the opaque dirt layer, roughness-driven scattering. All sorts of things are kind of going on here with and all of it is going to be achievable with a substrate material. And then we have something simple like this, where we have a wood that might have a varnish or a lacquer on it. Bare wood isn't the same as a varnished wood. Here we have the ability to have a kind of a clear coat layer on top of it, reflecting back a different roughness value than the actual wood itself. And we're able to have multiple kind of normal maps kind of at play here. Here we're picking up some of the lines of the grain of the wood, but we also have kind of pockmarks on the thin coat layer as well. So we have independent roughness per layers, we have independent normals per layer, all of this being able to be achieved. And then we have something like accumulation of material, where we have kind of sand accumulating here on this rock, and we're able to have kind of essentially two layered materials, and we have top layer diffuse, we have partial occlusion of a base material, and it's all going to be achievable through physically plausible blending. We can create accumulation masks. We can talk about how we can kind of use tessellation to kind of grow this as well, now that we have nanite supported with substrate as well. So here as well we have moss or snow. We can take full advantage of the fuzz maps, the subsurface scattering effects available to us. So if you are looking and trying to think, okay, where do I start with substrate? What could I do to kind of really show it off? These are a few examples that you might want to try and just have a go at and see if you can recreate these effects.